Hey all, welcome to part two of our 2025 Immunity Masterclass. I hope that as you watch the first Masterclass, you really had an opportunity to evaluate for yourself just some things, not only philosophically that you believe, but also what areas of your life you can implement or look at or adapt or help your kids with or grandkids or whatever it might be to ultimately empower yourself, strengthen your body, and build a stronger immune system. Because even since the last recording, I mean, it's just amazing how many people and how many families have struggled with serious fever issues. And you also see the wide spectrum of how people choose to adapt to that or choose to take care of it. Everything from, taking cool baths and getting adjustments and eating really healthy and fasting and getting lots of sleep to heavy medications and fear and, all sorts of stuff. So, I would just ask you as we start here to first think about when we talked about germ versus terrain theory, where do you put the majority of the stock? Do you believe in strengthening the host, or are you afraid of exposure? Some of the other factors, like body weight, like sleep, like inflammation markers, like all this different stuff. What is it that you can control or that you can influence? Because, something that I've thought about since the last time that we were on this together, that I thought about quite a bit is ultimately, one of the things about life is often what's free is not valued, and what's cheap is not really assessed for the true cost. So I'm going to say that again. What's free is often not valued, and what's cheap often is not truly looked at for what it costs. And so some examples of that would be, for instance, with boosting your immune system. Certainly, we talked about with the supplementation portion, vitamin D, but when do you get vitamin D most effectively? When you're in the sun. So sunshine, exposure, also being outside, fresh air, clearing your lungs out, deep breathing, going for walks or runs outside can really is shown to boost your immune system. Sleep. There's so many people who spend lots of money or take lots of medications or do lots of things when really darkening their room, going to bed at a certain time, getting off a stupid screen, not allowing themselves to Netflix binge, whatever it might be, and really getting high quality and large amounts of sleep could radically change their overall health. Exercise, same thing. And, another one that maybe not everybody thinks about is grounding. And, if you're not familiar with that, you could look up grounding on YouTube. There's all sorts of seminars and videos, but, connecting with the earth barefoot is really what grounding comes down to. And I think a lot about, for instance, like with grounding, when people say, I just feel better when I'm on the beach. Well, I'm sure looking at the ocean or looking at the Great Lake or looking wherever you're at, of course, there's value in that. But, you think about fresh air, you think about sunshine and vitamin D, you think about your feet are touching the ground, and there's something about the overall energy in your body. And so I don't personally do some of the things that you see online now, like about grounding sheets or mats, but I certainly think there's potentially some value in it. But, I am one of those guys who, when I take my dog out in the morning, this morning, I stood out there for about 3 minutes barefoot on the ground and grounded, and so, sometimes investing does take time. It costs money to prepare fruits and vegetables. It costs your time to go shop for those versus driving through somewhere. You really have to look at where you spend your time, effort, and money shows where you have value. If you get up early and go to the gym, or if you prioritize going to the gym after work, if you work out on the weekends, any of that kind of stuff. But then also going back to that thing about cheap has costs. Sugar and processed foods are largely subsidized. One of the reasons that organic food is so much more expensive is it's just not subsidized. It doesn't actually cost as much more as it looks like in the difference in pricing, but cheap processed food gets more subsidies than organic food does. Another one, cheap has costs. My insurance covers it. My insurance pays for my statin, even if it gives me cancer. My insurance pays for the steroid shot in my back, even though it radically multiplies the arthritis in my back and is going to decrease the quality of my life long term. It's cheap, it's easy, and my insurance, pays for it. And so, are there possible times and places for those things? Absolutely. When using cholesterol medication as a simple example, for the majority of people that are on a cholesterol drug, there's things that they could do to not need that drug, or they could look at, is the marketing, or did the drug company possibly pay off the data points that cause millions of people to be on those? When you really look at, for instance, cholesterol drugs, there's a lot that could be debated on ratio versus under 240 versus under 200, the amount of HDL that makes your cholesterol being over 200 okay. But the actual reality is, instead of looking at any of those clinically, the majority of doctors are trained that if your number is over 200, you put people on a drug, regardless of the effects. Regardless of the fact that they could genetically test to see if that person's likely to get damaging side effects from that drug. That's not paid for, but the drug is cheap and covered by your insurance. What's the real cost? And so when you look at it, if you're on medication, you should look at what's the real cost. If you ate processed food today, what's the real cost? If you find that you eat out a lot versus meal prep on Sundays or whatever, what's the real cost? I'm not here to say what's right and wrong, but when people say, I really didn't want it, but I did this. I really didn't want to have back surgery, but by the time it hurt that bad, or I lost control of my bladder or bowels. But there's a reality that for many of you already, I'm preaching to the choir, but by investing in a regular maintenance schedule, you're radically less likely. By getting your children adjusted, you're preventing them from potentially ever needing that, hopefully. There's things that ultimately come down to, what value do you put in it, not what do I regret? And this is, we have so many opportunities. And even if you made a bad decision or two, where can you move forward right now? And so to summarize the things that we talked about last time, think about, as far as supplementation, are you taking good quality supplements, and are you taking what you should be? Are you getting enough sleep? What type of food is allowed in your body? And I'm sure we all have a vacation meal here and there, but what's a regular daily basis? One really good thing to do is to have a food journal and really look at over a week, how much crap do I actually eat versus just telling myself I'm eating good? How often do I exercise? Not how often do I plan to exercise, but how often do I actually exercise? And then again, like right now, how often when I'm healthy do I live in a way where I consistently expose myself to the general population to build immunity? I used the example last time of nursing homes. So the 6 things that we're going to cover today. Number 1, stress. There are many studies that show that, for example, people who are depressed have a weaker immune system. People who are stressed out have a weaker immune system. There's in chiropractic school, they talk about the 3 types of subluxation. Subluxation being the misalignment of your spine, pinching or infringing on the nerve through inflammation or compression, which therefore can cause pain, but will affect wherever those nerves go. So physical is the type we typically think about stress for, pain or issues, but there's also chemical as far as toxicity, and emotional. If you've ever seen somebody who, for instance, loses a loved one, or has their spouse pass away, or has someone that has a severe health problem that they really truly love, and it's so painful to watch them go through it, their immune system goes down. Chemical stresses, for instance, smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol, or different things like that, on top of chemical stresses that are in processed foods, eating Jell-O, or the chemical preservatives that are in, chips or fast food or things like that. All of those stress your body. As a reminder, besides movement, the second most energy intensive thing your body does is digest what you consume. And so the more chemicals that are in that, the harder and more stressful it is on your body. And that absolutely does weaken your immune system. In the studies of the blue zones, where more people live to over 100 years old, one of the things that's very consistent across blue zones is that people live in community. They're social, they're loving, they're intentionally lighthearted, they like to laugh. And so one of the things, with stressors, and again, this is not a psychology lecture, and I don't pretend to be a therapist, but ultimately, the perspective or the way you look at your day, do you look for, there's a term called negative cognitive bias, meaning that, like, for instance, if you go on a week-long vacation, your flight there is great, everything's great, but one day, I don't know, the pool doesn't work and it gets cold, and on the way home, your flight has a 2-hour delay. And when somebody says, hey, how was your vacation? So commonly someone will say, it's great, except our flight was delayed on the way home and the pool was cold one day. And so, that kind of sucked or whatever. It's like, look at training your brain to look for the good things, to look for the good things that happen. Because in any given day, there's very few perfect days, but there's a lot of good and great days. And so again, the stress, and then how do you remove the stress? Well, sleep is a big deal. Again, not putting the substances in, getting adjustments, supplementing, removing the stress, being intentional about scheduling with people you love and care about, going for, I don't know, a meeting, a coffee, a workout, healthy habits versus meeting them at a, less healthy habit place, whatever you want to say there. So stresses, physical, chemical, emotional, mood, perspective, all those affect your immune system. Next, the free stuff. So, think about, do I get outside when it's open, when we're sick or when it's, 40 degrees in the winter, do we open and air out the house? Talk about something that's been done generationally that a lot of people don't do. Even just airing the house out because of the household pollutants of air. In the winter, when you're, let's say, cooped up, depending on which study you read, anywhere from 5 to 50 times more toxic inside than outside. Now, in a major city, or if you lived in a big city in China, that might not be all the way true. But in the Midwest, if you live in the greater Rockford area, the amount of pollution to the amount, airing out your house can be a great way to boost your immune system. You may not want to go stand out in the cold in your bare feet, but that's one way to ground. Exercise requires no membership. You can exercise in your home. Sleep requires nothing but planning. A lot of these free things really, really can increase your immune system, increase your quality of life. Next, chiropractic. So number 3 of the 6 for this, chiropractic treatment. Keep in mind, everybody knows that chiropractic affects your neurology. So chiropractic affects your neurology, and your brain controls every function of your body through your nerve system. So if it's controlling every single function of your body, well, your immune system and the components of your immune system, everything from your lymphatic system to your skin to how your white blood cells react, your immune response is controlled by your neurology. And when you get adjustments, along with relieving pain or along with maintaining proper motion of the spine or posture, the stimulation of the nerve system is shown conclusively to stimulate your immune system. There's studies that show that white blood cell activity doubles for 15 to 30 minutes after you get an adjustment. There's also studies that show that just like your metabolism increases after you work out for a period of time, for at least 36 hours, your immune system remains elevated after you get adjusted, which is why, while, in this new era of, don't expose me, in my opinion, kind of baloney, in the world, and I said this on the last one, remember, give or take 50% of exposures are done when the person's not symptomatic. Even with COVID, what did we have? We had isolate because of what? Asymptomatic carriers. What are those? That means that people who feel just fine, but they can transmit. And so if you went and lived in a bubble and you didn't get exposed, you would not strengthen your immune system, you weaken your immune system. Now, keep in mind, there's variables and variants. Like if you're super immunocompromised, if you just had surgery, if you're doing chemotherapy, if whatever, there are things that can make sense to, let's say, avoid the general population. But when you're healthy, a great way to boost and build your immune system is to be around that. I've said this before, and now I'm sure it's way more than this, but I tracked in the first couple of years, I was exposed to COVID at least 400 times. Now, what are the likelihood that by constantly being exposed, not only was that good for my health, not only was that good for my family's health, but when people came in to be seen, I was way less likely to be a carrier because my immune system knew how to kill it quickly compared to the people who weren't healthy, hadn't been exposed, and would carry it for a lot longer period of time. In fact, the funny thing, without going too sideways, one of the funny things that you look at with COVID is like, alcohol sales skyrocketed, depression skyrocketed, abuse skyrocketed. These different things that really weaken your immune system skyrocketed. Now, am I saying people wanted to be depressed or they didn't use it, that alcohol was an outlet that maybe was healthy for them in some way? I'm not here to say these things, but ultimately, when we're really trying to shallow the curve, the best way to shallow the curve, the best way to boost your immune system, the best way to protect other people that you love and care about is to do healthy things so that you are not a weak host constantly carrying infectious disease. Boosting and strengthening your immune system is not just good for you, it's good for those that you love and care about. And that is not the way it's generally portrayed in the media. And so this is something to challenge for you to think about. There's also within chiropractic treatment, there's a study that shows that your overall immune response doubles, or you could state that someone who's routinely adjusted for 5 years or more potentially has twice the strength of an immune system of somebody who doesn't. And so, you can survey tons of people in the clinic. I can't tell you how many people say to me on a regular basis, like, man, I just can't believe how much less I get sick. I used to be knocked out twice a year, and this year, nothing. Or this year it was for 24 hours, or this year it was whatever. I mean, there are definitely some things going around now that are even healthy people are dealing with. I'm not saying that. But again, in general, if you get sick, getting an adjustment can help take the edge off, can help speed up how fast you heal. And routinely being adjusted boosts your immune system so that when you are exposed, you're already stronger. Number 4 of 6, detoxification. So there's something called toxic accumulation. So the majority of people do not efficiently detoxify at this point. The majority of adults, there are genetic variants that cause issues for this, but also if you read the book, that's the heart book, The Paleocardiologist. If you read the book, The Paleocardiologist, it talks about toxicity-wise, people are exposed to 2 days, in 2 days, more toxicity than people in 1910, what they were exposed to in their entire lifetime. And we think of that back then, coal mines and different things like that, steel mills, as being so toxic. And certainly that probably wasn't the average person. That's much more toxic environment. But think about that. In 2 days, you're exposed to more toxicity than somebody a little over 100 years ago was exposed to in their entire life. Do you think that even how well your kidneys, liver, skin, all these other detoxifying organs, how well they work, they need better support. And a lot of that support they need from like green cruciferous vegetables and different things that help your body naturally detoxify. First of all, a lot of people don't eat enough of them. And then secondly, a lot of them don't carry as much nutrition as they used to because of artificial fertilization and genetic modification and, different things like that. So you need to consume more of it, and we're in a more toxic world. So there are detoxification supplements. Like, again, we carry a great detox supplement. If you have not detoxified in the last year, you should do a box of detox in most cases. If you haven't detoxified in 5 years, you should do it, in my opinion, for most people. And feel free to talk to us about it before you do it, at least 3 months in a row, and then 1 to 2 boxes a year ongoing. But cleansing your body of toxicity that you're holding allows your immune system to function at a higher level because it's not being subdued by chronic and too much toxicity. The next one, sanitation. So sanitation, this is something when if anybody's ever had a discussion, or if anybody's ever questioned why, for instance, vaccines have gone from 20 some doses in the 80s to over 70 doses currently, and they say it's saving lives. And again, I'm not here to debate that, but one thing that I would encourage you to look into is that the single largest drop in death rate has been decrease in infectious disease due to sanitation. I want to say that again: decrease in infectious disease due to sanitation. So having clean drinking water, having toilets that move the things that you excrete away from the city or down into a safe processing environment. Sanitation, not even, in my opinion, not even debatably, has increased life expectancy more than all the medical stuff, more than anything else, even more than chiropractic. I mean, while there is a time and a place for medicine, there's life-saving things. You can make the argument for inoculation and all that kind of stuff. I'm not here to say what's right. What I think people forget is that sanitation, and then here's the problem: taking sanitation too far. Homeostasis, symbiotic relationships. So spraying Lysol on everything, in my opinion, is taking sanitation too far. Putting hand sanitizer on kids is taking sanitation too far. Why? Because there's a symbiotic relationship where your body naturally has healthy bacteria on your hands, in your mouth, in your digestive tract, in your sinuses. And when you take antibiotics for a sinus infection that would have cleared up anyway, when you take antibiotics for an ear infection that was largely viral, when you have antibiotics in these non-organic meats, when you spray all that stuff, like I said, that is arguably, and in my opinion, over sanitation, and that does weaken your immune system. And isn't that crazy to think about? Like, even the American Medical Association, if you really look at their guidelines, the last time that I read it, it specifically showed that you're supposed to use hand sanitizer when you're going to come in contact with a severely immunocompromised person. So if you're going into ICU and you're going to hug or touch grandma's hand or something like that, sure, put hand sanitizer on. But doing it in church, doing it constantly, it weakens your immune system and literally likely makes you a larger spreader. So sanitation is a beautiful thing. Over sanitation should be debated and something that you should look at for yourself. So that we'll leave it at that. Before I go on to number 6, the mystery word number 2 is theory. So theory is mystery word number 2. So you think about terrain versus germ theory. Are you looking at strengthening the host or being afraid of the germ? Both have validity, but many people ignore the terrain part of it. So theory is mystery word number 2. Lastly, for building a strong immune system, allow your body to heal itself. Allow your body to heal itself in non-life-threatening situations. Give it strength, give it sleep, give it vitamins, give it adjustments, give it healthy eating, give it lots of fluids, give it the support to heal itself. And here's why. I'll give you a couple examples. Number 1, we see people somewhat frequently that deal with chronic bladder infections. And again, in many cases, a bladder infection might need to be treated with an antibiotic. I'm not here to say if it should be or shouldn't be, because it can turn into worse things than that. But what research also shows is that when you kill that infection with an antibiotic, often your immune system doesn't develop immunity to that bacteria. And so if you come in contact with that again and you're a weakened host, you likely get the bladder infection again, leading to more antibiotics, leading to more damage to the body, leading to more likelihood of cancer, leading to more other side effects, leading to. So think about that. It's like, well, wait a minute. Well, then what do I do? Well, first of all, if you already have one, you may need to do an antibiotic again in certain cases. But for instance, there's certain supplements that can really change the pH of the bladder, so you're less likely to turn into a full-blown infection, like dehydrated cranberry extract and D-mannose, and these things that support that you can take for a period of months or maybe even a year. And that way your body comes in contact with all these different bacteria. And if it can find it and is a healthy host and can kill it on its own, then you develop immunity to that certain bacteria. Now, both viruses and bacteria mutate, so you run the risk of coming in contact with a different one. But as your body develops a stronger and stronger immune system, it starts to recognize, oh, this is very similar to this other bacteria. I'll kill it, encapsulate it, and develop lifetime immunity to it. Just like we talked about on the first masterclass with the flu. Another example, a fever. Breaking a fever under 104.5 degrees actually is shown to radically extend the amount of time somebody's sick. So again, in life-threatening situations, or the current data shows that somewhere at 105 or 106, you probably need to break the fever. Openly, my daughter was just at 105, and one day hit 106 fever last week. We chose, now again, in our house, 2 medical professionals, we chose not to break her fever at all. And why do we do that? Well, let's say it's a virus, which it most likely is. People are like, oh, what about all this influenza? That's a virus. Viruses double on average every 20 minutes. If you break a fever, which raises your body temperature, viruses typically die at around 103 degrees, bacteria at around 102. So if you break the fever, if you take Tylenol or Motrin or whatever you're taking and break the child's fever or your own fever, you're letting the virus multiply, and you're literally not only extending the amount of time that you're sick, but you're multiplying the risk that it becomes life-threatening by increasing the amount of infection growing in the body. And I am certain that's not the intent of the majority of great parents out there who break fevers. But I can tell you, it is a bad habit. It's not good medical practice. It's not good medical advice. You should have a fever breaker in your house. You should use the thermometer in case your child gets to 105 or 106, and it's one of those rare things like bacterial meningitis, which could cause brain damage. But for the majority of people and the majority of children, breaking a fever is a horrible decision from a lifetime immunity, building the immune system and shortening the amount of time the child's sick. And so if you've been breaking fevers, I hope that at least makes you think about it. Of course, it's your child, it's your body or in your life. You do whatever suits you best. But again, think about, are you allowing your body to heal itself? Because when you use medical interventions, you not only have the side effects of the drug, but you also decrease the body's ability to develop long-term immunity. And again, not to link, but that's literally the entire idea with immunization or vaccination, even though we know that they don't last more than 10 years on average. That's still the idea. So in general, it can be easily stated or extrapolated that the majority of the population agrees that healthy people exposed to life-threatening viruses or bacteria therefore develop immunity and increase the likelihood that they're not going to die or get sick if they're exposed. Are there some things that you could improve on? Are there some things that would be easy? Are there some things that would be free? Or where are you ready to invest more in yourself because you value yourself, your family, and your family's health so much? I hope you have a very blessed day. Appreciate all of you for taking the time to watch and invest in yourselves.